Here we go. Jake and Josh are here to analyze the game they love for the team they love. This is another Dolphins podcast. Here's your host, Jake Mendel and Josh Houtz.
Josh, I don't know if you saw this, but the Dolphins were blocked from interviewing Ejiro, Evero, the Panthers defensive coordinator. And all I got to say to you, my friend, is some teams are in this, mindset. Maybe we shouldn't let our coordinators interview with other teams. And then you got the Miami Dolphins who rolled out the red carpet to send Vic Fangio to Philly. How do you feel?
About which one? Being denied access to Evero. I mean, that kind of sucks, right? I mean, he's one of the bright defensive minds. We've seen him from stop to stop, take a defensive unit and elevate them to the next level. So that was an intriguing name that people originally immediately came up. But as for the Vic Fangio thing, I'm still upset about that, man. I feel like the Dolphins could have done more to prevent that from happening. But if you want to keep relationships in the NFL, I guess Mike McDaniel was trying to do the right thing. So I'm still upset about that. Still want Vic Fangio to pee off. And as for this, hopefully maybe the Dolphins can revisit this later down the road if, maybe the Panthers decide that they don't want to keep him around. But that's a very young defensive mind who I do believe has been interviewed for even head coaching jobs at times. So definitely an intriguing name. Was a little bit surprised when I went on the Finsider and saw that they were denied access. I was like, dude, I must have been sleepwalking through yesterday or something.
Yeah, so he had a head coaching interview with the Seahawks. He was actually also blocked from interviewing with, let me see here, the Jags and the Giants. And you kind of get the idea of maybe the Panthers want to kind of keep their young defensive coordinator with their new offensive-minded head coach in Dave Canales coming over from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was a name I was kind of excited about, though, seeing Evero on the block. The 2022 Broncos were 7th in total offense. The Panthers were 4th in total offense a year ago. Those were two defenses he ran. A former Rams safeties coach. You kind of can maybe see some sort of Mike McDaniel connection there with the genius young coaching minds that the Miami Dolphins are looking for. This seemed like a great opportunity for the Dolphins. I'm kind of bummed about it, but I guess it kind of is what it is when teams can block those lateral moves to other teams.
Yeah, I mean, we can't sit here and, wrinkle our nose at it because we're going to see the Dolphins do this from time to time as well. I mean, we've seen it throughout history. So hopefully he sticks around, gets signs with the Panthers, and they can do good things because I do think what he's done throughout his career is deserving of being a defense coordinator and eventually a head coach in the NFL.
Completely agree with you. They also, I think on Monday, will be interviewing Brandon Staley, which is a pretty interesting name, Josh. We already talked about that a little bit. Obviously, his defenses with the Chargers, ugly. But that chemistry he has with Jalen Ramsey, you're kind of under the impression that he might be someone who, while his defenses weren't great, get him in a room with some of these leaders on the Dolphins defense and let them pick up some sort of scheme that can let those guys be guys and lead the team hopefully to a playoff win.
Yeah, I said it before. We all get caught up in the moment, right? But we all remember Brandon Staley and what he did with that Rams defense. I mean, we talked about in a previous pod, you've tweeted out about the star position, almost creating a solar system around Jalen Ramsey, their relationship throughout everything, the way it sounds like Jalen Ramsey thinks the world of him. And then let's not forget, I think he's part of the QB collective. I think Mike McDaniels even spoke glowingly about his defense and how hard it was to game plan against. So we all know he fizzled out with the Chargers. I think he went 24-25 as head coach. Never could be a head coach. We saw some of those interviews towards the end of the season. I mean, dude, he was tail spinning out of control. But those guys sometimes want redemption, right? Maybe I'm just the guy that wants that good fight. But every time these guys get fired, I just think wherever they go next, they want to prove that they can be a head coach again. So maybe you get the best Brandon Staley when he reunites with Jalen Ramsey. But definitely an interesting name. But after what he did last year, 28 total defense, 30th in pass defense, 17th rush defense, 24th in scoring. It's not necessarily a name you want to hear after Vic Fangio departed, but I do think once he comes to Miami, if that is where the route they go, I think we could sell this and maybe a young Brandon Staley, kind of that young-minded guy like you mentioned with the Evero, him with Mike McDaniel, they could push each other. Who knows what could happen? This is a very important decision, though, for Mike McDaniel. Intriguing name for sure. What do you think about Brandon Staley, Jake?
I'm starting to lean into it. I think he could be the right candidate. I think the Dolphins got to go outside the box here. I mean, the decision with Vic Fangio to sign him and make him be your defensive coordinator made so much sense, right? It made that kind of it kind of felt like a meme, right? Where you have the goofy young offensive mind and then the old grouchy defensive mind there. And you thought it would work out well. I was actually kind of surprised it didn't work out well. And you do wonder if there was different multiverse where the Eagles job wasn't open, that, hey, maybe they'd come back and everyone would be happy and kind of keep moving forward here. But man, I do think Brandon Staley could really help some guys lean into their talents, lean into what make them strong players. And that's what Vic Fangio didn't do, right? It was all about the scheme. It was the scheme knows best and the scheme comes first. And we saw the scheme get worked time and time again, where we have other guys. You look at what the Chiefs are doing, man. They're winning games 17-10. Steve Spagnuolo has been absolutely awesome. And we see them using different schemes, different coverages. So while Vic Fangio and that defense is absolutely excellent, I mean, I think they could have tweaked some things at times to maybe open up some more plays, get Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, those guys more involved when they were still on the field. And that's kind of the hope with Brandon Staley, that you're really going to maximize your roster. And that's what the Dolphins are going to need to do, right? You're paying, Tyreek Hill so much money. Tua's fifth-year option is going to be $24 million unless you get him on a bigger deal. You need someone to come in and say, hey, I know what we're working with. I know what's on the cupboard. I'm going to get the most out of it, because we heard time and time again, Vic Fangio, the defensive tackle depth isn't enough. The safety depth isn't enough. Okay, well, if you don't have enough at these positions, how can you hide those weaknesses without saying the talent is going to limit this defense as a whole? And I think Staley could do that. And he has an awful, awful track record in the last 3 years. I completely understand that.
Yeah, I completely understand why people will be upset. I mean, let's be honest. No matter who they sign, someone's going to be upset. Dolphins Twitter is going to find a way to, wrinkle their nose at it. I just wonder if there was an age gap. Well, obviously there's an age gap, but you know what I mean? Vic Fangio seeing a young Mike McDaniel, the way he interacts with these players, wearing his awesome shoes with the tags on it. You wonder if Vic Fangio is just like, I got to get out of here, right? I got to go do something else. But for me, man, I do want to see what Brandon Staley can do. I think, like you said, the biggest thing with Vic Fangio was just him being so boneheaded and stuck in his ways. The scheme knows best, not utilizing a player like Jalen Ramsey, who at times, I don't want to say he seemed frustrated, but he did seem a little bit annoyed when he admittedly said, I want to go against their number one wide receiver. And Vic's just like, nah, man, we can't do that. We can't make that work. So a guy like Brandon Staley, I can I can understand that. I don't know everything, right? We don't know everything as fans. We can just sit here and look at it from an outside.
At least I know nothing.
Yeah, I don't know nothing either. So if Brandon Staley's the signing, we will all sit back and we will find a way to push that. And it'll be McDaniel Staley 24. We'll make like a little.
Dude, the mental gymnastics. That's the thing about this football team, man. I will do any sort of mental gymnastics to sell myself on whatever this franchise is doing. I like to think I have a little bit of awareness of saying, at least before going in, that I understand I'm making those gymnastics, but fandom's a crazy, crazy thing. Josh, what about Buffalo Bills linebacking coach, Bobby Babrich, son of Bob Babrich, if you didn't know?
Yeah, I did actually. I tried to do some research on these guys. I mean, when you see the name, you see this young guy. He kind of looked like he might have been related to Mike McDaniel, for being honest. One of those pictures going around, like if you threw glasses on there, that would be him. But I'm going to be honest, man. If you look in the comments, a lot of Bills fans were really upset about this. So that kind of made me start to think, I mean, I don't mind this as much, right? He's a young guy, 40 years old. I think he coached safeties up until 2022 when he moved to linebackers coach with the Bills. I think people credit him for Poyer's success, a little bit of Micah Hyde, things like that. So the fact that Bills fans hated to see it, the fact he's young might bring a different aspect to the Dolphins defense. I'd be intrigued by it. So again, we don't know nothing, right? We don't know who this guy is. We didn't hear about his name until just last week, but we've seen success on the Buffalo Bills defense, whether it be at safeties, whether it be at linebackers. His father was a coach for 18 years. Or 19. I don't know if I had that written down right, but yeah, I'd be okay with this. I would push it, and I'd be okay mainly because Bills Mafia was in shambles. What are your thoughts?
He's been an assistant in the NFL since 2011, interviewed with the Packers and Giants already, and he was on the 2014 Browns with Mike McDaniel. This is another name where I'm kind of interested in it. It doesn't really sell as the, football vision. Like, again, man, I thought Fangio, the idea of having that grizzled vet to come in and be the guy made so much sense, where, all right, if we want everything to be a collaborative effort, make everyone the same age, have them be all these 40-year-old coaches who really lean into talking and really understanding things with their defensive staff and their players. Yeah, man, I'm all for it. I think it'd be an interesting hire. I think the Dolphins have truly, if there's any position outside of the offensive line the Dolphins have truly, truly struggled to develop, it's linebacker. So sure, man, I think I'm all in on a linebacker coach coming in to be the guy, except both of these scenarios. I mean, even the Fangio one to an extent, since he was up in the booth, I think one of the most things I'm fearful of with the 2024 Miami Dolphins is that That bright-eyed look once you reach the playoffs, that inability to call that timeout you need to, that split-second challenge decision that comes out to bite you. I don't know if the Dolphins are going to be ready for those situations, and I think it just speaks to how awesome Mahomes has been his entire career. To see him go in and be not miss a beat, be so cold in these playoff moments. You saw how long it took Andy Reid to become that playoff guy and be comfortable late in the season to make the right play calls. I don't know if this Dolphins coaching staff will be ready for that. And then you kind of get into the big picture of when does this rebuild end? How long will Stephen Ross buy in? And I legitimately would buy into seeing this team be right where it needs to be in 2024, except just that inexperience comes back to bite them. And I think that's an okay for a season to end, but I don't know if other people would feel that same way. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. And I'm sitting here, racking my brain. I had a question for you. Do you think maybe they lean towards a guy like Brandon Staley because he has been on a Fangio staff? He kind of ran that defense similar in style. I mean, we know we have a laundry list of, free agents and stuff. So this defense could look different regardless of how. So they can come in and pretty much change the scheme however they want. But to keep some continuity, do you think maybe they say, okay, Brandon Staley, you kind of have a Vic Fangio style defense. We know Jalen Ramsey's probably sitting there banging the table for him. I think I said that right there. I mean, if Jalen Ramsey comes up to you and says, look, coach, or Mike McDaniel comes to you, hey, Jalen Ramsey, hey, Javon Hahn, which guy do you want? And Jalen Ramsey comes up, Brandon Staley's the best, defensive mind I've ever worked with. I mean, that's going to mean a lot coming from Jalen Ramsey, right? So do you think they might lean towards that? I mean, I'm sitting here answering my own question, but sorry about that.
No, I think that's definitely their mindset. And there were some really interesting conversations between McDaniel and Staley. The QB Collective posted some videos that I thought were super interesting to go check them out. But I also go back to after week 1 where McDaniel was kind of laughing when discussing the Brandon Staley effect. It kind of was like he wasn't taking it seriously, which the Dolphin beat writers, man, they don't do a good job of making things seem serious when they say things like the Brandon Staley effect. Don't get me wrong. They are not great at that, but you kind of thought that they might be headed in a different direction. But yeah, man, I definitely think that world makes a lot of sense. And you're probably hitting some of the same key points that McDaniel wanted.
And then one more question for you. They were getting ready to pay Vic Fangio, the highest defense coordinator check in the league. I mean, do you think that they have given up that route of bringing in that grizzled head coach or that defensive mind who's been a failed head coach? Or do you think they might still look at a guy like, we talked about Leslie Frazier. I've seen people throw out Rex Ryan jokingly. I mean, there are some big name defense coordinators that, might for the right price come back into the NFL like a Vic Fangio. But I feel like after what Mike McDaniel just had to go through, he might not go that route. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's the right price for the wrong equation, I think, because, Vic Fangio was exactly what you wanted in that scenario. I think they do want someone younger. I think they want someone who's going to be in the building for an extended period of time. I think they might have set sail on the grizzled vet. I think they kind of felt – I go back to the Brian Flores thing, right? They got rid of him because he didn't really work with the coaches, work with the staff, work with his players too well. And I think that's kind of what Stephen Ross might be driven in on at this point. Someone who's going to come in, someone who's going to be able to evolve, change, and develop. That's what we want to see out of this defense. And it's just still so strange to me that, we're sitting here the second week into the offseason talking about, I can't wait to see this Dolphins defense evolve, change, and develop, when the reason this team sputtered out of control is because the offense didn't sputter, change, and develop. So there's a lot of questions going on here. And I just like to keep that point in the back of our heads here as, there are a lot of issues still we got to figure out.
Yeah, and that's why it's so painful. We're still so much over the cap, so many decisions to be made. But we're sitting here and I'm talking about continuity on the defensive side. Let's remember, Anthony Campanelli is also an in-house candidate that the Dolphins are going to be bringing in. And if I'm sitting here praising continuity and, running that defense back in a way, promoting the guy that was here last year would be the right step in that direction. And would feel so Dolphins if we're being honest.
That is it. That is all the time Josh and I have for you guys today. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. We have stuff planned for you guys throughout the offseason. But for Josh and I, see you guys later. Fins up.
Fins up.